There is a quiet war inside many people, a struggle between the part of you that longs to remain open and alive, and the part that has learned to protect itself by turning to stone. Some respond to this war by shutting themselves down completely. They hide behind a mask of indifference. They cut the thread that connects them to tenderness. They move through the world as if no one can touch them, and they call this safety. And for a while it works. The less you feel, the less you are hurt. The less you open, the less you can lose. The walls you build keep the storms outside. But Carl Jung would warn that this kind of protection comes with a cost so subtle you might not notice it until it's too late. The slow erosion of your humanity. Because the walls that keep out the rain also keep out the sun. You stop noticing the beauty in the smallest moments. You forget how it feels to be moved by kindness, or to be undone by something unexpectedly gentle. You begin to live in a self-imposed winter, where nothing grows because nothing is allowed in. And yet, Jung also knew the opposite extreme is just as dangerous. To live with your heart so exposed, so unguarded, that every disappointment becomes a wound, every criticism a deep cut, every betrayal a confirmation of your worst fears. True emotional strength is not the absence of feeling. It is the capacity to hold feeling without collapsing under it. This is where the transcendent function comes in. Jung described it as the ability to hold two opposing truths at the same time, without rushing to choose one and kill the other. It is the art of standing in the tension between vulnerability and protection, between closeness and distance, between pain and peace, and not shattering under the weight of that tension. Most people cannot bear this space. The ego hates it. The ego's primary instinct is to simplify, to choose a side. It says be untouchable by closing yourself off, or stay open and prepared to suffer. It cannot imagine a third way. The ego builds walls to keep danger out. But the unconscious does not obey walls. What the ego tries to expel doesn't vanish. It retreats underground, into dreams, into habits, into subtle behaviors that leak out when you least expect them. And when those repressed feelings return, they often do so in distorted forms. Anger that feels disproportionate, anxiety without a cause, emptiness that no achievement can fill. What you repress does not die, it waits. The transcendent function offers an alternative. It's not about repressing one pole in favor of the other. It's about making your inner world spacious enough to hold both. Like an alchemist working with fire and water, you allow the heat of your passion and the coolness of your reason to coexist, not as enemies, but as collaborators in transformation. Imagine this in a relationship. You love someone deeply, but you know they cannot meet you with the respect you deserve. The ego will push you to choose, love them and abandon yourself, or leave them and erase your love completely. The transcendent function says, keep your love and keep your boundaries. Let both live, and in that coexistence, you become whole. Wholeness is not perfection. It's not an unshakable happiness. It is the integration of all your parts, light and shadow, tenderness and strength, joy and grief. The highest form of protection is not building walls, it is building wholeness. Wholeness makes you less porous to the projections of others. You stop emitting the silent signals that predators recognize, the unspoken please love me at any cost, or I'll shrink to fit what you need. You begin to inhabit yourself fully, not cold but steady, not distant but discerning. This kind of steadiness is unsettling to those who thrive on instability. They can no longer provoke you into reaction. They cannot twist your emotions into knots for their own comfort. Their old tactics lose their grip because you no longer split against yourself. But holding the tension between opposites is not glamorous work. It will ask you to sit in discomfort longer than you'd like. It will ask you to question the reflexes you've built over a lifetime. It will require you to stand still when every impulse says run. Fix it. Choose a side. The ego will tell you that if you don't choose quickly, you will be destroyed by uncertainty. But Jung knew the opposite was true. If you can bear uncertainty, you create space for something new to emerge, something the ego could never invent on its own. This is why the transcendent function is both rare and powerful. It is not just a mental skill. It is an act of courage. It is the willingness to let the self, the deeper, wiser center of you, guide your responses, instead of letting the ego dictate them out of fear. The self is not interested in safety at all costs. It is interested in wholeness. It wants you to be able to love without losing yourself, to protect yourself without closing your heart, to face pain without becoming bitter. And every time you choose to hold the tension, every time you resist the urge to run to one extreme, you strengthen this capacity. You become less like glass and more like a tree, able to bend without breaking, able to shelter without uprooting yourself. This is emotional invulnerability, not the kind built from frost, but the kind grown from roots. When you stand in this place, you will notice the world around you change. The people who once drained you may drift away, not because they decided to leave, but because your energy no longer feeds their hunger. In their place, you will attract those who can meet you as an equal, people who can hold depth without exploiting it, who are not afraid of your fullness, and who bring their own wholeness to meet yours. Free. And perhaps this is the paradox Jung understood best. You become untouchable precisely because you allow yourself to be touched by life. When you first begin the work of holding opposites, it feels unnatural, almost impossible. Your mind searches for the comfort of a clear answer, a clean conclusion, a single truth you can hold like a shield. The ego thrives on certainty. It likes to know who is right and who is wrong, where the danger is and how to avoid it. But the self, the deeper totality of who you are, does not rush to closure. It understands that the most important transformations happen in the space where nothing is resolved yet. It is in that space that the unconscious can rise, bringing with it the forgotten parts of you, your shadow, your hidden wounds, your unclaimed strengths. The shadow is not evil. It is simply the part of you that has been pushed out of sight. For some, the shadow holds anger they were never allowed to express. For others, it holds needs they were shamed for having. For still others, it contains the tenderness they learned to bury, because the world told them it was dangerous to feel too much. When you avoid the shadow, you do not erase it. You live it out unconsciously. It bleeds into your relationships, your choices, your reactions. You repeat old patterns without realizing that they are not fate. They are memory, acting itself out again and again. Whatever you refuse to face within yourself, you will meet again in the world. Jung saw this as one of life's most reliable truths. The people who irritate you the most often carry something you've disowned. The situations you keep attracting often mirror an unresolved inner tension. This is not punishment. It is the psyche's way of bringing you back to yourself. But here is the difficulty. The ego does not want to meet the shadow. It fears losing control. It fears the discomfort of admitting that not all of who you are fits the image you've built. So it projects. It casts the shadow onto others, seeing in them the traits, the flaws, the darkness, that actually belong to you. This is why some people seem to keep meeting the same personality in different faces, in different relationships, across years of their lives. They think they have terrible luck. In truth, they are meeting the same lesson until they learn to integrate what it's pointing to. The Transcendent Function asks you to stop running from these mirrors. Instead, you stand before them and say, "Yes, I see this in you, and I see it in me." That moment is disarming. It dissolves the charge. The energy you once poured into resisting and blaming is now available for understanding and integration. To become whole, you must be willing to own what you once denied. This is not the same as accepting harmful behavior from others. It is about understanding why you were open to it in the first place. It is about seeing how your own unhealed parts responded to the call of someone else's unhealed parts. The ego hates this level of honesty because it removes the illusion of innocence. It forces you to admit that, while you are not to blame for being hurt, you are responsible for learning what allowed the hurt to continue. Responsibility is power. It returns your agency to you. It tells you that your boundaries are not built from fear, but from clarity. Clarity changes everything. When you can see the role of your shadow in the patterns you live, you can choose differently. You stop trying to heal the past. Through the present, you stop seeking validation from those who cannot give it. You stop allowing the old wound to dictate what kind of love you will accept. This is where the self begins to lead. The self is vast enough to hold your light and your shadow. Without shame, it has no interest in perfection. Its only interest is truth. Truth that integrates, truth that heals, truth that frees. And when you live from the self, you begin to notice a shift in the people you attract. The ones who thrive on your uncertainty lose interest. The ones who cannot meet you in honesty drift away, not because you fought them off, but because you are no longer available for the game they play. Healing is not about changing others. It is about becoming someone who no longer resonates with their chaos. Some will tell you that this sounds lonely, that by stepping into your wholeness, you will push people away, and it's true. But you will lose only those who cannot meet you without taking from you. In their place, you will find relationships built on reciprocity, on respect, on the quiet ease that comes when no one is performing and no one is shrinking to make the other comfortable. This is the freedom the Transcendent Function offers, not the freedom to avoid pain, but the freedom to face it without losing yourself. It does not mean life becomes easy. It means you no longer collapse at the first sign of conflict. It means you can allow discomfort to exist without scrambling to erase it. It means you can say no without guilt and yes without fear. Every time you choose to stand in that tension, you strengthen the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind. And on that bridge, something remarkable happens. The parts of you that were once at war begin to work together. You are still human. You still feel deeply, but the feelings no longer control you. They inform you. They guide you without overwhelming you. This is what Jung meant by integration. It is not about silencing parts of yourself. It is about giving them a place to belong. When every part belongs, there is no internal exile. And without exile, there is no rebellion from within. And that is when you become truly untouchable. There comes a point in this journey when you realize that becoming untouchable was never about being hard. It was about being whole. For years, maybe decades, you learned to survive. You built defenses that kept you from breaking, but they also kept you from truly living. You thought the answer was to close the door on your heart. But the truth is, real safety comes when the door is open, and you know you can protect what's inside. This is not a skill most of us are taught. We are taught to pick a side. Be tough or be tender. Be closed or be open. We are told that you cannot be both. Jung's work says otherwise. He knew that the human psyche is not meant to live in extremes. It is built to move toward balance, to hold contradictions, to transform tension into wisdom. And this is why the Transcendent Function is so radical. It rejects the false choice between coldness and vulnerability. It says you can be warm without being consumed, firm without being cruel, available without being exploited. The ego struggles with this. It wants things simple. It wants a plan, a formula, a guaranteed outcome. But the self understands that life is too alive for formulas. It flows. It changes. It requires you to meet each moment with presence, not pretense. Your strength is not measured by how little you feel. It is measured by how deeply you can feel without losing yourself. And this is the shift you begin to notice in yourself. Where once you would have bent to keep the peace, you now stand without hostility. Where once you would have explained your worth, you now embody it in silence. Where once you would have chased those who withdrew, you now let absence speak for itself. This doesn't make you invincible in the way the ego imagines. You will still feel the sting of rejection, the ache of loss, the disappointment of betrayal. But the difference is, these things no longer define you. They move through you without uprooting who you are. You no longer live in reaction to the world. You live in relation to it. The relationships that remain in your life now feel different. They have room for truth, for quiet, for the kind of vulnerability that does not fear being weaponized. There is no need to constantly perform or manage perception. You can rest, and rest, as Jung would say, is not laziness. It is alignment. But this place is not reached by accident. It requires practice. It requires the daily choice to stand in the middle of tension without running to one extreme for comfort. The temptation will always be there, to close up when you are hurt, to overexpose yourself when you crave connection. But each time you pause, each time you allow both impulses to breathe without acting on them, you strengthen the bridge between your conscious and unconscious, and over time that bridge becomes unshakable. When you are whole, no one can use your fractures against you. From here, something profound happens. You stop attracting the same wounds dressed in new faces. The psychological magnet that once pulled chaos toward you is dismantled, not because you fought the people who hurt you, but because you changed the part of you that was open to their chaos. Now, when instability arrives, you recognize it instantly. You no longer confuse intensity with love. You no longer take absence as a challenge to prove your worth. You no longer give away your energy just to be chosen, and perhaps most importantly, you are no longer afraid of being alone, because alone no longer feels empty. It feels like home. This is the quiet victory, the one no one sees but you, the one where peace is no longer something you visit, but where you live. And yes, you will still meet people who are drawn to your light. Some will be worthy of it, some will not. But now you have the discernment to tell the difference, without making it about your value. You protect your light, not by hiding it, but by shining it without apology, and refusing to dim it for anyone. In this way, you are no longer touchable in the ways that once hurt you. You are still human, still feeling, still open, but your openness is no longer an entry point for harm. You have become the guardian of your own inner world, and because of that, you can walk into the world without fear. The ultimate freedom is not needing the world to be safe before you can feel safe within yourself. So as you stand here, at this stage of your journey, ask yourself, Where in my life am I still giving away my center? What patterns have I outgrown but still find myself repeating? And what would it look like to finally choose differently? Pause. Let the answers come slowly. Do not force them, because this work is not about speed. It is about depth. And depth takes time. You have begun something most people never attempt. You have chosen to meet yourself in the tension, to stand where others run, to hold what others drop. This choice will change everything. Not overnight, not without effort, but steadily, in the small ways that add up to a life you no longer need to escape from. So keep walking, keep holding the opposites, keep listening to the self over the noise of the ego. When the old patterns call you back, remember, you have been here before, and you know the way forward. Take this with you now. What insight rose up in you while you listened? What truth did you feel in your body, not just your mind? I want you to write it in the comments below, not for me, but for yourself. When you put words to it, you anchor it. And when you share it, you remind someone else that they are not alone. Then practice it in the next conversation you have, in the next boundary you hold, in the next quiet moment when your ego tries to pull you to one extreme. Because knowledge without practice is just another story you tell yourself. But practice, that is how you become the story. So keep watching the next video. Keep training the muscles of awareness and presence. And keep choosing yourself again and again until the choice becomes who you are.